Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending this watermelon meeting. I'm Tony Keinath. I'm the vegetable pathologist at Clemson University for the state of South Carolina. I've been here 30 years, but I grew up in the thumb of Michigan, so I'm really still feel somewhat like a Midwesterner. I've been working on watermelons here in South Carolina for the past 30 years, as I said, pretty much doing 2 crops a year. It's warm enough here in Charleston that we can get a short fall season in, which is very convenient for being able to repeat experiments. I'm going to talk today about 3 different experiments. One was on anthracnose and 2 are on gummy stem blight. These are all on watermelon. I don't want the melon growers, though, to feel left out. So I did include 1 picture of gummy stem blight on muskmelon here. I do think, in general, the information about gummy stem blight on watermelon is directly transferable to gummy stem blight on muskmelon. And I guess I don't have any pictures, but I will point out that we have seen anthracnose on muskmelon twice in South Carolina. It was on 1 farm and we found it 2 years in a row, but seems to have disappeared since then. Anthracnose can be a reasonably common disease on watermelon in the southeastern United States. I would say growers have an outbreak about once every 2 to 3 years. And I did hear that they saw a reasonable amount of anthracnose on watermelon in North Carolina in 2020. In general, the FRAC 11 group of fungicides, things like Quadris and Cabrio, are the best at managing both foliar anthracnose and fruit anthracnose. The problem, I think, for some growers is that they have gotten away from using these type of fungicides in their regular spray program because other watermelon pathogens have become resistant to these fungicides. For example, the gummy stem blight pathogen in both powdery mildew and downy mildew. The FRAC 11 fungicides do not control any of those 3 diseases. And so if growers don't anticipate anthracnose, they may not be using the FRAC 11 fungicides. Really, the best option would be if there was 1 fungicide that was effective against both anthracnose and gummy stem blight, which would make scheduling fungicides a lot easier. So we looked at anthracnose on fascination with SP6 as the pollinizer. We purposely transplanted them somewhat late for South Carolina conditions so that disease would develop on the fruit. When I'm doing an anthracnose fungicide trial, I generally spray every 10 days. Growers, of course, to manage anthracnose should be spraying weekly. I stretch out the spray schedule, so obviously we have a little bit of disease developing. One of the products that you'll see in the following slides is called LBG63FTA. This is a 3-way combination of phosphorus acid or potassium phosphite, azoxystrobin, which is the active ingredient in Quadris, and tebuconazole, which is the active ingredient in Folicure or Monsoon. I did 6 foliar ratings and we only did 1 harvest due to several reasons, as I'm sure many of you are aware of from 2020, COVID restrictions on how many people can be in the field at once, how many hours a day people could work, and people being out of work due to either having COVID or being in quarantine. But we did separate the fruit into marketable size, so that would have been the early harvest and immature fruit. And then in each of those size classes, we again separated the fruit into those that were healthy or those with anthracnose. And when I say fruit with anthracnose, that means a fruit with 1 or more spots of anthracnose. So the foliar ratings separated into two very clear, distinct groups based on the fungicides we used. The untreated control had a reasonable amount of disease by the end of the season, even though disease developed rather slowly. Inspire Super did not control anthracnose, and this was consistent with an experiment I did a couple years ago. The three fungicides that worked were Topsin M, and then the two rates of the LBG product. Results when we looked at anthracnose on the fruit were mainly similar in that Topsin and LBG increased the number of healthy fruit when we looked at all sizes together. The low rate of LBG was not as good when we looked at the marketable fruit. That is the early set fruit. But Topsin also increased both the number of healthy fruit that were marketable and small size. Again, as on the foliage, Inspire Super did not control anthracnose on the fruit either. This little graph shows that there is a distinct relationship between foliar anthracnose, which is shown on the bottom. So as we have more disease on the foliage, you also get more disease on the fruit. So remember that normally disease shows up first on the foliage and then spreads to the fruit. So good control of anthracnose on the foliage, I believe, will help with controlling anthracnose on the fruit. So just a few more comments about this trial. We had two fungicides that were effective, and I believe the LBG product was effective because it contains azoxystrobin. In this trial, Topsin was more effective on the fruit than when I had tested it previously, but in general, we had less severe anthracnose overall, and that could be because fascination is less susceptible to anthracnose than the diploid seeded watermelon I had used previously. And so LBG, because it contains both azoxystrobin and tebuconazole, may be effective against both anthracnose and gummy stem blight. This product is still in development, but it is really quite similar to the standard product Quadris Top, which again is one of the few fungicides that has two active ingredients, one for gummy stem blight and one for anthracnose, and is registered on cucurbits. Let's switch now to talking about gummy stem blight. The two most common fungicides used by South Carolina watermelon growers are Manzate or Dithane or other generic formulations of Mancozeb, and the generic formulations of Folicure. Monsoon is the common one people use here, but there are several other generics as well. However, there is a low level of insensitivity that's been found to Monsoon in one of the less common gummy stem blight fungi in Georgia and Florida. I don't know if you all have heard that now there are considered to be 3 different fungi that cause gummy stem blight. You all in the Midwest, I don't believe, have this less common one that we have here in the Southeast, but it has been found in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. So there also have been several new DMI fungicides that are registered on cucurbits, and so I wanted to know if any of these newer products are more effective than Monsoon. So this was a fall experiment, since normally it's easier to get good gummy stem blight pressure in the fall in Charleston. The field had cucumber the previous year, and so that led to some plants with stem cankers, as you see in the photo there. particularly in watermelon. When you see stem cankers on watermelon with gummy stem blight, that probably means the fungus is carried over in the field from a previous cucurbit crop. Again, we used fascination with SB6 as the pollinizer, and we transplanted late for a fall crop in Charleston, but that was because of a lot of rain in August. We couldn't get into the field. In this trial, we made 6 fungicide applications, 3 of the DMI products, and they were all rotated with Manzate. Some of the DMIs can only be sprayed 3 times per season, such as monsoon. So I limited all of the DMIs to 3 applications so that there would be a fair comparison among the different products. So the first application was about 3 weeks after transplanting, and I made 6 ratings. Now, disease developed rather slow in this trial compared to what we normally see with gummy stem blight in the fall. So I'm just showing the last rating here, and you see that even with the water or the non-sprayed, no fungicide control, we only had about 11% of the foliage covered with gummy stem blight. But fortunately, that was enough gummy stem blight to separate the treatments into 2 very distinct groups. Metal and Inspire, rotated with Mancozeb, were not better than not spraying anything. Same thing with Mancozeb. The 4 products that worked very well in this trial were Rime, Proline, Monsoon with the spreader sticker Induce, and Inspire Super. There really was no difference between the 4 products shown in blue, and there was no difference between the 4 treatments shown in orange. And here, of course, you see typical lesions of gummy stem blight on watermelon. One thing, though, we did notice in the first half of the trial was stunting of leaves, phytotoxicity in the monsoon and induced treatment. This was apparent 4 days after the first application and lasted for about a month. I have not seen this before with just straight monsoon, so I suspect it may have something to do with the induced spreader sticker. A spreader sticker is recommended on the monsoon label, so that's why we added it to this treatment. We're planning to repeat this trial this fall, and I think I'm going to include another treatment with just monsoon so that I can double check on this effect of the spreader sticker. So that's just something to be cautious about. I would say at this point, I would not recommend a spreader sticker if you're spraying a tebuconazole product. I have seen a similar type of stunting with tebuconazole applied to watermelon seedlings in the greenhouse. But this is the first time I've seen this in the field. We did not harvest these plots because they were planted so late. So I can't say whether or not this phytotoxicity had any effect on yield. So fortunately for South Carolina growers and other watermelon growers who use monsoon, it was among the most effective DMI type products, with Proline and Rime being as effective as monsoon. I don't think many growers in South Carolina are going to switch to either of these other 2 fungicides because they are not yet available in generic formulation, so monsoon is quite a bit cheaper per acre. Those of you who are using Proline to control fusarium on watermelon likely are getting some or probably reasonably good control of gummy stem blight early in the season and may not need to apply another fungicide for gummy stem blight. The one thing that was a little different in this trial is that Inspire Super was actually as good as monsoon when you have higher disease pressure with gummy stem blight, more gummy stem blight. Normally Inspire Super is better than monsoon. But at the low pressure I had in this trial, I think that's why these 2 treatments look the same. I did want to talk for a minute again about another experiment that I've done. Actually, it was a series of experiments between 2017 and 2019. And this was a project designed to look at which fungicides could help to prevent the spread of gummy stem blight in watermelon fields. And two of the products that I looked at were Switch and Inspire Super, which, as you all know, are some of the more expensive fungicides that are labeled on watermelon and used against gummy stem blight. So the question was, are they providing extra benefit for the extra cost? And a large part of this project was focused on fruiting bodies of the gummy stem blight fungus, which are the tiny black dots that you see here in the center of the leaf spot that I've enlarged. They always form in the center of the leaf spot. So if you're trying to confirm gummy stem blight in your field, and you really the best way to do this is to find these fruiting bodies. They're always in the center of the lesion. That's because the fungus only reproduces on the part of the tissue that's already dead. You won't find it on green tissue. I'm just going to show some of basically the results of these experiments. So on the left, the graph shows typical progression of more typical progression of gummy stem blight than I saw in 2020, where you see in 2018, the blue line, which is the water control treatment, by the end of the experiment had 90% disease severity instead of only 11% disease severity. Spraying Bravo weekly did a reasonably good job, definitely reduced gummy stem blight compared to not spraying. And then the two treatments in red could not really separate, Switch and Inspire Super. Note that even though I didn't bother to write it in the caption, those were both rotated with Bravo because you cannot spray them every week. They have to be rotated with another fungicide. And so rotating Bravo with Switch and Inspire Super improved control. The bar graph shows the average results from 2017, 2018, and 2019. There really were not any significant differences between the years in terms of how the fungicides performed. Bravo was always better than water, but Inspire Super and Switch rotated with Bravo were always better than Bravo. Now, for the scientists who are listening, I did have the individual active ingredients that are found in Inspire Super and Switch in this trial as well. So I had separate additional treatments with fludioxonil, cyprodinil, and difenoconazole. I'm not showing them here because those treatments are not registered as standalone products on cucurbits. But again, Inspire Super and Switch as combination products were in general better than the individual components. The other thing, as I said, I looked at were the fruiting bodies on the leaves, and I'm not going to show all the data that I collected, but the percentage of leaf spots with fruiting bodies was significantly lower on leaves sprayed again with Inspire Super and Switch rotated with Bravo than either with Bravo or with water. So 70% of the leaf spots had fruiting bodies in the water treatment, about 55% in the Bravo treatment, but that was cut in half by using Inspire Super and Switch. So I do think that Inspire Super and Switch, part of the reason they work so well is they prevent the fungus from producing so many fruiting bodies. I did not see a difference, though, in the number of fruiting bodies on sprayed or non-sprayed leaves. Apparently, these fungicides are not quite good enough to reduce the number of spots, but they do reduce the size of the spots was lower on sprayed leaves than on non-sprayed leaves. But I think the real benefit of these fungicides is that they're also interfering with reproduction of the gummy stem blight fungus. So just some comments about this trial. So rotating Switch and Inspire Super with Bravo was better than just using Bravo by itself because you have less diseased foliage, fewer fruiting bodies of the gummy stem blight fungus, which leads to less disease spread. We did not get real good yield data out of these 3 trials, but when we were able to collect yield data, I did not see any difference between sprayed and not sprayed plots, which tells me that certainly in dry seasons, it is not worth the extra cost to spray Switch. Yes, you would get better control, but you're probably not going to get the extra money back that you spend on Switch by getting a higher yield. And the same could be true with Inspire Super. I don't mean to pick on Switch, but Switch is significantly more expensive than Inspire Super, at least based on prices here in South Carolina. I do want to emphasize again, though, that I've consistently, and when I say consistently, I mean for 30 years, have seen that Bravo provides better control of gummy stem blight than mancozeb. A lot of our growers are still hesitant to use Bravo because of the potential for injury to fruit during hot weather. So certainly during the harvest period, all of our growers switch to the mancozeb or Manzate products. Some of them have started to use Bravo early in the season, and then also would be more likely to use it in the fall season when you don't have the problems with risk of injury to fruit. I'd just like to acknowledge my crew who helped harvest all those watermelons and did all the spraying. And for the anthracnose trial, I had support from Corteva. They did not allow me to talk about their newest product that I test, but I don't think they would mind if I tell you that I thought it worked very well against anthracnose. And so I think you may see some new product coming from Corteva in the next couple of years that has anthracnose on the label. Luxembourg Pamol also helped support that trial. That was the LBG product. Then the 2 gummy stem blight trials were funded by a specialty crop block grant program through the South Carolina Department of Agriculture. I am happy to take questions.
Thank you, Tony. This is Dan. I think since I'm the pathologist, I'll start off with the questions here.
Okay.
Excellent talk. I was going to ask you who made the LBG, but you mentioned that was Luxembourg.
Yeah.
And do you know, is that coming online anytime soon?
I don't think so because I was in discussions with them about testing it against gummy stem blight this year.
Okay.
And so since it's only identified by numbers and doesn't have a name yet, I don't think it is registered. They do have a similar product called Tebuzol, I believe it's called Tebuzol, which is tebuconazole plus the phosphoric acid.
Okay. Another point that you made is getting some kind, if you use Proline for fusarium wilt early in the season, you think that will have some effect against gummy stem blight?
Yeah, let me just qualify that by saying I don't know about the first drip application, but when you're doing the drench applications, particularly if you're probably going to be getting some of that on the foliage as well, and it is a systemic fungicide. And so I think that, gummy stem blight to me really doesn't get ramped up until certainly after flowering and, more when the fruit start to set. Or, obviously that sort of depends on your climatic conditions too, when your rainy period starts. So I just don't want people to feel like they have to spray a lot for gummy stem blight if they're already spending money on Proline.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Thanks. That's great information. And if you have additional questions for Tony, please put it in the chat box.